Are you a producer who's been cooking up beats for a while, but your mixes still ain't hitting the way you want? Trust me, I've been there. For years, mixing was one of the hardest parts of producing for me. After 5+ years of producing full time, I've learned a lot through trial and error, but you don't have to go through all of that. Because in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 biggest mixing lessons that completely changed the way my beats sound. These are things I wish someone had told me years ago. Just all the essential sauce you can use to level up your mixes in one video. Now, before we dive in, I already know some of you are going to say, but bro, you forgot this or you left this out. If we strip away all the fancy mixing techniques and just focus on what actually moves the needle, then these 5 lessons will have the biggest impact on your mixes. So yeah, let's get into it. So I've got these 2 beats right here, exactly the same drum pattern. See if you can hear the difference. The only thing separating these 2 patterns is one thing: source material. And that's lesson number 1. If your source material is crap, i.e. you're using weak drums, lifeless melodic presets, or thin bass samples, then your mix isn't going to turn out how you want it to. I get this often with the producers that go through my mentorship program. Most times they think that mixing starts once they're done cooking up, but this isn't true. It actually starts when you load your first sound into your project. So how do you actually pick good sounds? Well, it is kind of subjective, but good source material, good sound selection isn't about choosing the flashiest sounds. It's about picking ones that fit together and serve the whole vibe of your track. Take this beat, for example. During the whole process of making this, I'm kind of just looping this melody and just auditioning sounds and thinking, okay, does this fit the kind of sound I want to go for? The main question I'm asking myself is, does it complement or does it clash? Is it adding something or just taking up space? It's kind of like cooking a meal. You don't add 5 spicy ingredients at once. That's just way too much. You need balance. So something bold like your main melody, something solid and filling like your drums, and then maybe a little spice like ear candy or effects. Each ingredient should enhance the dish, not fight for attention. That's how you make a track that actually hits. Now, once you're working with good source material and good sounds to work with, you're going to need this next skill, lesson 2, to not only level up your mixes, but supercharge your workflow and make the mixing process as seamless as possible. So picture this: you're at a bar drinking cocktails on a quiet night. The place isn't that busy, so the bartender comes over and asks if you want to make your own cocktail, just for a bit of fun. Would you A, pour everything in randomly and hope that the flavor comes out right in the end? Or B, measure and adjust each part of the cocktail as you go to get the balance right? In the beginning, most producers I work with go with option A. They throw in their samples and VSTs with a little thought as to where each sound will sit in the mix, which causes the beat to sound off while they cook up, which leads to a bunch of unfinished beats, and the result? No progress made. So instead of them working this way, I have them try option B, which is lesson number 2, and that is to do what I call pre-leveling. Some of you watching may already be doing this, but the idea is that you're mixing and leveling your beat as you cook up, adjusting the volume and panning of each sample or VST in context with the rest of your project. Let me show you a quick example of this in real time. So we'll just come back into that beat I showed you earlier. So what I'm going to do is rebuild the drums and then I'll pre-level as I'm going. So we got this hi-hat pattern right here. Sounds a little bit loud, so I'm just going to come over here. Next, let's bring in some snares. Just a simple pattern, some nice layers. But yeah, let's come in and pre-level these. Coming through a little bit hot. Let's turn these down a little bit. Now let's bring a kick in. A little bit quiet for my liking. Bring that up. Cool. Now pre-leveling will take you a long way, but if you want those distinct, unique mixes, then adding lesson number 3 in will just take your beats to the next level. And it's kind of easy to do, to be honest, but this is where a lot of beginner producers trip up. They start slapping on effects, reverb, distortion, endless EQ tweaks to each and every single sound in the track, not because the sound needs it, but because they just think they're supposed to. But here's the thing: mixing isn't about doing the most, it's about doing what's necessary. Think of each beat like cooking a steak. If the cut of meat is already quality, you don't need to drown it in seasoning. You just need to add what brings out the flavor. Same goes for your sounds. Only process them if your ear tells you something's missing or clashing. That means don't EQ for the sake of it. Don't compress a sound because a YouTube tutorial said you should. Don't add reverb to every sound to make it feel mixed. That might just end up actually drowning out the track. Instead, just trust your gut. So the 3rd lesson is to process with purpose. If a sound feels too dry in context with the style you're going for, then sure, throw some reverb on it. If the low end is muddy, then maybe clean it up with some EQ. But always ask yourself, why am I doing this? If you can't answer that, then just don't touch it. Processing is about intention, not habit. So as you level your beat, process only when it actually helps the vibe. This next lesson will help glue your tracks together, just helping them sound more cohesive. And audio engineers are going to love you for doing this when they're recording over your beat. And that is by setting up mix buses. It's one of the easiest ways to add that sort of final glue to your beats and make it sound more polished. But for some reason, a lot of newer producers skip it entirely. At the very least, you want 3 main buses. One for your drums, one for your melody and instruments, and one for your bass. Why? Because once you've got everything grouped, you can start shaping your beat as a whole instead of tweaking individual sounds. Think of your beat kind of like a team. You've got your drummers, your melody players, and your bass squad. If you're trying to coach each individual player during a game, it's going to be chaos. But if you've got captains of each section and you give them guidance, then you start moving like a unit. And that's what mix buses are there for. They help you manage the bigger picture and make sure your beats hit as one solid vibe, not a bunch of disconnected parts. So let's jump back into our beat right here. I'm just going to grab a few free mixer tracks and start organizing. So first I'll rename one melody, another one we'll call drums, and another one we'll call bass. And then for each one, I'll just right click them, go to dock 2, and then just dock them to the left. That way they kind of stick there to the left, you know, it doesn't matter where I scroll in the mixer. As you can see, I've kind of color coded everything just so it's a bit easier on the eyes. So the melody elements are in green, bass is in blue, drums are in pink. So essentially, I'm just going to send all of these tracks to the drum bus to be set up, and I'm going to send all the melodic tracks to the melody bus. Same thing with the bass, and all the bass to the bass bus. To route all these sounds to the right buses, I'm just going to hold control and left click over all of my melodic tracks, right click the melody bus, and then select route to this track only. All of these melody tracks now flow into this melody bus, and then that melody bus goes to the master. You can kind of see that through these signal lines right here. I'll do the same thing for the drums, and then same thing for the bass. Now when it comes to effects, I'll be real with you, I don't really add a whole bunch to the drum or the bass bus. If they're not sounding good already, then slapping a bunch of effects probably won't fix it. But if you do want to add a bit more character, then here's a few solid options. First one is some subtle EQ shaping. Nothing crazy, just, you know, brighten up the highs a little bit and give the mids a little bit more body. Stock EQ works just fine. See how it just gives it a bit more power, but without more. Totally optional. If your drums are already hitting, then you don't need to do this step. But if you want to add a little bit more oomph, then a little bit will go a long way. Another cool option is tape saturation. Adds a bit of warmth and grit to the drums. I like using the J37 from Waves, or Kramer tape works great too. A great free option is the Ferric TDS. A really nice creative plugin I like to use is some spring reverb. So this is really good if you want that acoustic vintage kind of feel to your drums. Something like the Arteria spring reverb sounds incredible. Or if you want a free option, then try the Moller spring reverb from Hornet. You can hear that old school feel to it. Yeah, let's bring the blend down. Another technique is to use compression on your drum bus. Just helps glue them together a little bit, controls the high peaks and brings those lower sounds through a little bit cleaner. My go-to one for drums is the Puget Child compressor. That one's from Waves as well. After. But yeah, with that being said, I mainly just use my drum and bass buses to stay organized over everything. You know, if I need to tweak the volume of the drums, I can just do that all in one place. Now for the melody bus, I usually go a little bit deeper. This is where I'll polish things up and add character. Same as before really, we'll add some subtle EQ shaping. Just bring some more presence, high mids, bit more body. Again, you don't have to do this, but it's just a little step to have in the back of your brain. Another cool technique is some gentle compression. Come back to my old friend, the Puget Child compressor. After. You see it just very, very subtly brings it forward in the mix. And if I want to add a bit of warmth and a bit of vintage vibe to the melody, then I'll go back with some J37 or Kramer tape. And then to enhance that vintage vibe, I'll combine this tape saturation with a bit of detuning. Really good free plugin is the Origin plugin by Cymatics. So if I bring this movement dial up, it's way too much, but let's dial it back. And then you can add some of the go-to plugins like your reverbs, your delays, just to add a bit more depth to the melody as a whole. And then a go-to plugin of mine that I use in pretty much every single beat that I work on is this plugin right here called Fresh Air. And this adds that real nice polish and that sort of final glisten to the melody track. I'll really overdo this so you can hear what this thing's doing, and then we'll pull it back. So this is before. After. Okay, bring it back a little bit. But you see how much more present it feels now? But yeah, I want to emphasize the word subtlety during this part of the workflow. Try avoid going too crazy with the processing here. If you find yourself pushing certain effects too hot, then there's probably issues that you didn't take care of during the previous steps. All right, this brings us to the final lesson. And honestly, it's the easiest one of them all. You're going to be so relieved when you see how easy it is to get your beats sounding loud, punchy, ready to release and send out. This lesson is called mastering. Yeah, I'm putting those in quotation marks. A lot of producers think you need this crazy complex mastering chain to make your beats stand out, but that's just not true. And don't just take my word for it. Here's a quick clip from one of the goats in hip hop production, Metro Boomin, talking about his mixing and mastering process.
Just level everything out, basically. That's what I be doing. That's why I always did from when I was 13 and now. Like, I do the same shit. I just level it out how I hear my ear, like, to hear it, you know?
If your mix is already solid, meaning the beat sounds clean, polished, well balanced, and just sonically pleasing, then mastering is really just about giving it that final loudness and consistency across all your beats. Let me show you. So just find the loudest part of your beat, head to your master channel, and the first plugin I want you to try is some very, very subtle EQ. This isn't about making big changes, just tiny adjustments if needed. Maybe a little bit of brightness in the high ends, tame the lows a tiny bit. Try it the other way around maybe. Not too much. Honestly, I'm happy with the balance of this beat already, so I don't need it. This is an optional step. Step 2 of the master channel is reverb. Yep, you heard it right, reverb. I know it sounds weird, but just hear me out. Adding reverb on the master just helps house your entire track in one cohesive space, kind of gluing everything together in a real subtle way. I like using Valhalla Vintage Verb, mainly because the default preset just sounds incredible out of the box, so quick and easy. Here's what I do. Head to the EQ section and cut the low end out of the reverb. This just avoids muddiness. Come to the left and then turn the pre-delay all the way down. This just helps it blend more naturally. And then play the beat and toggle through these modes right here, 70s, 80s, and now. If you want more of a warmer preset, then stick with the 70s. If you want a brighter, cleaner sounding reverb, then 80s and now sound pretty cool too. Bring the size down as well a little bit. There we go. Right now it sounds a little bit over the top. I just really want to make sure that I'm happy with the tone of the reverb in context with the actual style that I'm going for with this beat. So leaving it maxed out just helps me hear that. But now here's a simple trick. Just come to the mix and bring it all the way down. I'm talking like 1%, no more than 1.3%. Honestly, you can barely hear it, and that's kind of the point. It's a very subtle move, but it just adds a little bit of extra depth to the track. And again, this is an optional step, but I just like to do this in my beats. And then the third and final step, we're going to be adding loudness, basically everyone's favorite part. So here's how you get your beat sounding loud and punchy without ruining it. The soft clipper. That's it. No magic sauce, just this one plugin. Essentially, the clipper is going to prevent the track from going over 0 dB, which in mixing terms is a big no-no. It's going to give us that overall loudness without crushing the drums and making them sound squished. So I like to use this clipper right here. It's the T-Rax classic clipper. You're going to load it up and just dial in the input gain using this dial right here. You don't need to touch anything else. You can see here in the gain reduction window, we're adding a bit here. If you're unsure, just push it way too far and then dial it back. Too much. Yeah, that seems to be the sweet spot. Like it. If you're looking for a free option, use the Fruity Soft Clipper. One thing to note, it doesn't have an input gain like the classic clipper does right here. So just before it on your mixer track, just load in something that you can use to add gain. So I'm just going to use a parametric EQ. It's got this little gain knob right here. As you can see, it just boosts the volume, brings it down. And then yeah, we're going to do the same thing. Just boost the volume, push it too far if you need to like before, and go from there. Way too much. Cool. Now, if you're not using FL Studio, then a really good free alternative is the initial clipper. Exact same process, just different UI. But this one is quite good because we've got our input gain right here. Leave everything else as it is. Threshold at 0, everything else down. Bring it up. Too much. It's pretty good as well. Now your beat's sounding loud, it's sounding polished, and it's ready to export. Here's my export settings if you want to go ahead and pause the video and copy them. This mixing format, this workflow has not failed me yet, and dozens of producers I've mentored use this exact workflow, and it's got them some crazy results too. And if you want me to expose and fix the gaps in your production and help you in your music journey in a one-to-one tailored fashion, then reach out using the link in the description. Peace.